And now our last presentation, which is in some kind a continuation on what we have heard now, because we will have very personal sharings about suicidality. I would like to invite the ambassadors of Look Deeper, Viktorija, Andreikėnaitė, and Julia Stashkovskaya. Look Deeper is an initiative of mental health ambassadors. Mental health ambassadors are people who share the experiences of mental health problems in their lives or of the lives of their close people. So, Viktorija, I see that you are ready. Please start.
Ačiū labai, Pauliau, už pristatymą. Malonu užbaigti šią prasmingą konferenciją Žvelk, giliau iniciatyvą.
Hello, thank you, Paulius, for this presentation, and it's really a pleasure to speak on this initiative. I'm Viktorija Andreikėnaitė, and I am the public health specialist and one of the coordinators of this initiative, Look Deeper. Today, I will briefly try to introduce this initiative, and side by side, we see Julia, who is the expert of her experience, and she will share her story. We carried out the stigmatizing provisions in the area of in the area of mental health study, and 65% of residents declared that they have the necessary knowledge. 1/3 of residents didn't have the opinion or didn't know whether people with mental health disorders could recover and work, and they didn't know what are help opportunities. 1 out of 10 had at least been diagnosed with the mental health disorder. 1 out of 5 says that their loved ones had at least once in their lives been diagnosed with mental health disorders, and 1/5 of the residents had contacted mental health specialists. How did the ambassadors appear in Lithuania? Of course, they were there and they are there still without any initiatives, but we launched that initiative back in April, and this year we are undergoing the pilot project. And in order for the project to appear in Lithuania, we thank the existing Ministry of Health and Vice Mayor Simona Biliūnė and the Hygiene Institute, which is at present coordinating this project. This is a certain platform where people can share the difficulties of mental health they are experiencing. And in Lithuania, at the moment, we have 14 coordinators, coordinating ambassadors. I'm one of them, and I represent the Suicide Prevention Trainers Association, which conducts assistive training in Lithuania, and we have been able to attract 11 ambassadors who openly share their experience. The initiative itself came from the UK. The project is called Time to Change. Sue Baker is one of the founders of this initiative, and together with Professor Brahim Tornikov, she is the co-author of articles stating that open sharing of mental health experiences reduces the stigmas in the public. And this is highly beneficial. As I've mentioned, this year is a pilot year, and together with the coordinators, we have had approximately 100 events. The feedback is good, and the ambassadors find the area to share and find those who are close to them, and people don't anymore feel that lonely, and they find the community where they can speak openly about mental health. I thank Yulia very much for joining. I believe that, Yulia, it may be really sensitive to share your experience. However, I believe that this is useful for the listeners and the society at large. And we can continue talking about mental health years and many years, but each story is enriching, and we find very useful insights. So I will invite Julia to join. I will give you the contacts. So if you want to raise a question related to the initiative Look Deeper, you may contact me or Julia, and you may contact us if you want. We will have 10 minutes for questions, so I hope you will raise questions because the discussion is always something interesting. Hello. Thank you, Viktorija, for introducing me. We thank the organizers for inviting me here. Yesterday, I had the first evening and the first few hours when after 17 years, after my father's suicide, I had the time to reassess the road that I have traveled on my own without any specialists, professionals. I thought, what could I share with me? You can imagine that I will not review my 17 years within 15 or 20 minutes. Of course, I will be looking forward to your questions. We will leave time for that. You have to be brave to ask what you care about. Maybe you have a personal question. I have some space within the initiative of Look Deeper, and I have space to take care of myself within that initiative or wider. My father committed suicide when I was 21 years old. I was in my fourth university year. It was the spring. I was at home at that moment. I would like to believe that he thought that I was not there. I was asleep. And in that situation, I had to react. He was still conscious. And my reaction was refusal, shock, lack of understanding. And on the same day, I left to celebrate my friend's birthday. I actually didn't realize what happened. As I have mentioned, it happened 17 years ago. And when now telling you this, I remember the morning that that vividly as back then. My father was 50 years old. It was his second attempt. I was the beloved daughter of my father. He would always he would always listen to me. I would always protect him, and our relationship was interesting. And having grown up, I started to realize that probably the relationship was not healthy because my father had alcohol abuse problems. He was very closed inside. He never spoke about emotions. His basic family was, uh, his primary family was violent. So this is the context, the picture of my father who died of suicide. So it was his first attempt, the second attempt. The first one was not successful. After the suicide, he was in hospital for 10 days, but we were close. We loved ones were shocked and met by the medical staff with the declaration. The doctor was saying to my sisters, I get prepared to take him to Kariotiškės cemetery or Rokantiškės cemetery. I was at a loss and I didn't get it. I turned to my sister and asked, what is Kariotiškės or Rokantiškės? And at the moment, it sounds even worse than back then. For 10 days, we were living in horror. And this horror would resonate in dreams and my flashbacks. My father's suicide, the whole story after I woke up that morning was the big trauma of my life, which later was my life's obstacle. And on the other hand, was the impetus to make change. After the suicide, well, I cannot call the experience as, cannot name it as pain. That was my yesterday's conclusion. There is much more within that. First of all, confusion. My whole basis broke down. No matter what the family was like before the suicide, I had plans. I was 21 years old. I was young. I had a vision how I was going to do things. For instance, whether I was going to consume alcohol at home, or maybe I won't because my father had alcohol problems. What husband I'm going to choose, whether I'm going to be like my mom or not. I had many schemes, which, as a result of my father's suicide, broke down, were shattered. The whole life plan was shattered of a young individual, and this led to many confusions, shame. This is the background feeling, main feeling, together with guilt, shame and guilt that accompanied me from the very first moment, even when I called the ambulance. I was ashamed that I have to do it because somewhere deeper, I realized that this is probably suicide. And when the medical staff came and asked for personal documents, for his personal documents, I didn't know where to get them from. And I was ashamed that I was not going with him, that ambulance is entering our staircase. And I was ashamed that during the funeral, the neighbors were whispering and calling suicide as this, something concealed. So I can go on speaking about the feeling of guilt in case of suicide, because this guilt has many forms, starting with trying to find guilt in others, then blaming my father and being angry with him. And then you start realizing that I was trying to acquit myself because I was feeling guilty in all of this. So, and as a cherry on the cake, for 17 years I have been followed by that. The question is why? This why changes its form. Why committed suicide? Why didn't say? Why didn't accept help in the hospital after his first attempt? Why didn't he speak? When in between the suicides, I was waiting for him to return from the night shift, and I would tell him, Father, don't do that again. Why did he do that again? This why is still lingering in my head, although I walked a long path in order to fuse that story in my own personality, in my own being. The story could have ended like that. He died of suicide. I experienced the textbook feelings, but real feelings. But my strategy, unconscious one, was to push this experience out of me. And I did that very deeply. I entered the master's degree studies, and I entertained myself a lot, and I started doing my dream job. And as a young specialist, I really had a dream job, and I traveled a lot. And 2 years after, when the time was approaching, the anniversary, 2-year anniversary was approaching, and that was at the end of May, when the nature gets wakes up. I got up without seeing colors, and this is not a metaphor. It's directly, literally. I didn't see colors. I didn't want anything. I didn't even want to commit suicide. It was such level of gravity, which was really difficult to experience. What's important is that my father's suicide was the green light for me to commit suicide. It was like permission of my father, who was respectable to me, that this was his decision. Child, I have died like that. You can do that as well. I felt the symptoms, that is, I lost colors, the lack of energy, and I contacted specialists. So briefly, what was very effective to me in the medical area was that I got very effective and quick help, that is psychiatric help, medical treatment. That was really effective for me and very necessary. I know that not everybody has the same experience, but I had a holistic approach treatment, a holistic treatment, and very fast one. And now I feel sudden grudge. Had I understood faster that I was mourning, had somebody told me that I had experienced trauma, because I was still young, I was 23 years old, or maybe 24, and it was the mourning and trauma, well, that would have been better, but nobody talked to me about that, and nobody paid any attention to it, and nobody talked about my father's suicide. We talked about my suicide risk. It's an emotional memory, but we can say this is very subjective. What I heard was, well, you are so young, you are so nice, and life is ahead of you, studies, work, and so on. So it was kind of the lack of acceptance that I can't think about it. What was not useful to me was that the psychiatrist herself tried to explain things to me via my personal traits, which was not useful to me. So this was unpleasant. So what is important and why am I here? Why am I feeling that the integration has happened and there's a long way ahead of me? Uh, and this is a sign that I understand how serious the situation is. First of all, psychiatric, psychological help and psychotherapy, which was focused on my traumatic experience. I'm still undergoing the psychotherapy. And what is useful is that it has always been done at my own pace, that is slowly. Differently from the medical system, I was not required to mourn quicker or get better quicker. And do you really need to go to the cemetery every weekend? And it had been happening for 7 years. There was no such judgment. Another important issue when integrating such a trauma is uh, being together, the togetherness. I have to thank my friends because I had two friends who could have listened to me all the time. And another form of togetherness is being active. I joined the youth line 3 years after my father's suicide. And recently I joined the Look Deeper initiative. And here I find people who are not afraid to speak about suicide. In the previous presentation, the speaker spoke about the permission to speak. Yes, when someone experiences the suicide of of a loved one, this is awful. So I actually expect that a specialist should be brave to hear that to hear what I'm feeling. And what I experienced from the youth line and the Look Deeper initiative, that I can stay as I am without any labels or facades, true to myself. I will be looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Julia, for your sharing. It's very sincere, open, and very informative. Not only you have spoken about how you felt, what helped you to recover, what you missed in the health system, what you enjoyed having in the health system. I'm very happy that today I'm wearing a jumper of the youth line. I didn't know that you would mention the youth line in general. I think that what the youth line is doing in general and in the suicide prevention is very important. And you also spoke about it. In the comments, we have many reactions, not so many questions I would like to share. Thank you for your initiative. It's very nice to see the programs of Look Deeper. Thank you, Julia, for your sharing. I know the situation after the suicide of a parent. Thank you for this initiative, Look Deeper. Thank you. And one question. Thank you, Julia. Do you think your sharing with teenagers that are hurting themselves or think about suicide would be important. Could I get your contacts? Yes, my contacts have been shared by Victoria. You can write to me. I always accept to participate in such initiatives. It is also my way of healing and recovering. Is it helpful? I don't know, because I haven't heard myself. I haven't heard myself from a side. I think that real stories always are helpful. My story sometimes brings me strength when I'm in harsh times. I've had problems and I've been down, and the suicide of my father was one of the biggest trauma, but I've had another problems. So my story was it gave me strength. So I think that my story would be helpful. We should just I would like to invite you to contact Look Deeper and with me, Ambassador. We support the teenagers. I would like to invite you to contact us. We do organize such events with young people and teenagers. Now we have many questions suddenly. What else in the psychotherapy, apart from the right pace, helps or has helped you? I'm going for psychotherapy for 13 years. So it's basically not so easy to name concrete things, but my first visit was important. My personal suicide risk was very high. It was difficult for me to speak. So at the beginning, we were communicating by drawing. It was important for me because it was difficult for me to speak. The second thing, we signed a contract that I will not kill myself. For me, it was okay. I could neglect that. I could still kill myself, but still, it was a kind of obligation for me to keep around. It was also important for me that she would not dig in my wound. She was with me, speaking about what is important for me, and we did not go into non-important details. And the connection, it sounds banal, but the connection still is the most important thing in psychotherapy. She was feeling my needs. She was able to meet my needs. She was not afraid of my worst dreams and fantasies and fears. She was not afraid of my silence. She was not afraid of my tears. She was not afraid of all the gravity that I had in myself and could not give away. In the psychotherapy, I had that space to express it. And I didn't see in her face some kind of fear for these 13 years. What you say, it's a kind of a conclusion of what we have been speaking today. Methods can help, but the connection is the most important thing. Meaning making, what has happened, what it means. The pace is important. Methods and drugs can help, but these are not magical solutions. Recovery needs time, care, togetherness, love. In the medical context, sometimes we think that this is not important, that drugs and methods are the important things. But no, what you say, different things can help, but togetherness, the connection with the therapist, with the friends, this is very important. There are many questions, but still it will be the last one, the one that I will read now. Julia, you said that shame and guilt was very important feelings after the suicide of your father. How did you deal with these feelings? And thank you for your openness. Thank you for the question. The first help was just to push away these feelings. I'm not guilty. All other people are guilty. My father is guilty. But later, okay, I'm still in this process, but what helped me was to understand myself in this situation. There is the story of my father's suicide. In this story, there is guilt and shame. And when I think that this story is my story, then I feel guilt. My psychotherapist helped me to go aside from the story, to see the story from a side. It's not me. I'm not the story of the suicide of my father. It's not easy to achieve that, but it was very important. And speaking for the guilt, speaking is the best remedy. Public speaking, it's always hard for me. I always think, oh my God, my father killed myself. What have I done wrong? It's guilt and shame together. But still, I understand that this feeling is not stronger than myself. It will continue in my life, but it won't take control over my life. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Viktorija.